grow up in like an entrepreneur family or have an entrepreneur spirit or know anything about business. My dad worked for Verizon. He's still there. You know, when we started the company, my first year with Joey, we did 1.6 million in revenue. By the time I was 18, I was looking at 5 years in prison because of this anger I had.
Welcome back to another episode of Intrepidus podcast with your hosts Dan and Anthony. Today we have Ray Reyes, a serial entrepreneur who just had an exit. So congratulations on that, Ray. Welcome to the show.
Wow, thank you guys. I'm really honored to be here, and I love your setup. It's amazing. It's so professional, and you guys have built something really amazing here. And I want to thank you guys for having me. And I know my wife was on here, you know, not too long ago, so it's really cool that we both get to, you know, participate in this and share our stories with your audience.
For sure. It's really nice to actually meet you because your wife, she was on the show. She was she was a doll. She was great, always smiling, but had nothing great things to say about you and how your journey influenced her journey. So we'd love for you to talk a little bit about your journey thus far.
Yeah, no, it's definitely special. I've been in recovery the past 15 years. Yeah, 15 years. And my wife, I think she's coming up on like 12 years. So like our whole journey together is in recovery. You know what I mean? And I didn't grow up in like an entrepreneur family or have an entrepreneur spirit or know anything about business. I remember being a kid and my dad worked for Verizon. He's still there, like 30 something years, you know? And my mom was a stay-at-home mom. I have 3 brothers, you know. My older brother has some learning disabilities. So I really didn't have like someone to say like, hey, that guy's really successful. Like that's who you want to try to emulate or build towards. I kind of like looked at my father as like, my, you know, your first hero, you know? And my dad did teach me how to go to work. Like he had that work ethic, you know, he's from Cuba. And my grandfather worked as a maintenance guy at a Short Hills Country Club called Baltusrol. So like work ethic was in my lineage as far as my grandfather and my dad. They always went to work, you know. And then as far as like my uncles, it was a little different story with them. When I was a kid, I'd look at my dad and he'd always be working. And then I'd see my uncles and they were like around all the time, you know. And as a little boy, I would be like, well, why is my dad always working? And why are my great uncles always around for everything, you know? And what I realized was they had real estate. They had a lot of high risers in West New York, Union City. And, you know, when they came here from Cuba, they didn't have money. So they kind of worked as like waiters, but they pooled their money as like, you know, family to invest in these real estate, you know, high risers where there's a lot of rents coming in, you know. And by the time I came around was 30 years later. So I saw the byproduct of 30 years of real estate, and they had a bunch of real estate all over North Jersey and, you know, Summit, New Jersey, and multi-families. And I was fortunate to grow up like with my aunts and uncles. They all lived in Summit, and they had like a 3-family and a 5-family next to each other. And they're like in the heart of Summit, which is like one of the really nice towns in New Jersey. And I was like so grateful because I'd go see my aunt. I walk inside, she'd have Cuban coffee for me and my brothers, and galletitas were like Goya crackers, you know. And then I'd go to the next house, I'd go upstairs, I'd see my aunt, and she'd have more coffee, you know. And you know, it was like my uncle lived there, so it was like really cool. Such a great environment to grow up in. But my home environment, it was like my dad went to work and my mom raised the kids. So it was a little different at home where, you know, extended family, I seen, they really didn't worry about money at all, you know, because money was a byproduct of the real estate, you know, where poverty mindset was probably my first defect in life, because I took on my dad's mindset, which was always scarcity, you know. And there's this book called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill.
Yep.
And the first thing that the devil attacks you, he doesn't have horns and a pitchfork, and he's not like poking you, but he'll start saying things inside your mind like, hey, you're poor, or you have no money. And, you know, I remember being a kid and like going to the bus stop, and maybe I wore the same jeans, you know, because we didn't have too much money, and kids would be picking on me, or I'll wear my older brother's sneakers, you know. And but it was good because it actually fueled me to want to like build something for myself, you know. And I remember, I don't know why I'm going on this rabbit hole, but I remember being like maybe like third or fourth grade. I was young, like 9 or 10, and I had these older kids. I mean, they would always pick on me, like make fun of my pants, make fun of my shoes all the time. And one day I just snapped and I beat them both up. You know what I mean? And those two guys never messed with me again. You know, and I kind of learned that like lioness, you know, like to like this hunger inside of me to not let anybody disrespect me. You know what I mean? So, you know, going through school after that, it was a little tough because if somebody said something the wrong thing, I kind of like snapped on them or whatever. And for me, like being an athlete was huge. You know, I played baseball, football, basketball. You know, but around 13, I started, you know, messing with drugs and alcohol, and that's kind of really where it got rough. You know, from like 13 to 20 years old, where was that 7 years of like your adolescent years where you're supposed to be like coming into your own, and I started really going down a dark path. And like, you know, looking back now, 15, 16 years later, I'm so grateful for it because it got me to my knees at a young age. And, you know, by the time I was 18, I was looking at 5 years in prison, you know, and because of this anger I had, you know what I mean? Like I had this beautiful extended family and a poverty mindset at home. And I wasn't going to let anybody disrespect me, but I didn't know how to handle these emotions as a teenager, you know what I mean? And I grew up Cuban where like you couldn't talk about like, Dad, I got this going on. It just, he didn't grow up like that. So I could, just suck it up, deal with it, handle it. You know, but before you know it, I'm 15, I'm going in handcuffs for the first time. And I'm starting to think to myself, like, what's wrong with me, you know? And I started thinking, oh man, if I could stop drinking and doing drugs and get away from these people, like, and I just couldn't do it, you know what I mean? And by the time I was 18, you know, I had this 5 year over my head, and like between 14 and 18, like those are like molding years, you know. Most kids are, you know, thinking about going to college and stuff like that, and you know what they want to do with the rest of their life.
You were trying to stay out of jail.
I was trying to stay out of jail, yeah, and trying to beat piss tests and probation officers, and it was horrible, you know. but at the time, like it's all I knew, you know. So it was my hell, you know. And I did go to my first outpatient rehab at 14, you know. And I remember I was going there, and there was an older guy, and I had this 5 year over my head. And if I, you know, back then marijuana was like considered heroin, you know.
Yeah, right.
Or now it's like you see CBD places and marijuana places open. They're like, come on in. There's a clown outside dancing. Like it's like alcohol, you know. And you know, this guy's name was Kurt. I'll never forget it. I popped 30. He's like, dude, you don't need to go to prison. You know what I mean? Like, I want to help you. And like, I couldn't see that at the time, you know. And I had a lot of anger towards like police officers and authority and judges, you know. But like, I got popped again, like just so many times, and people were always trying to help me, you know. And I remember, you know, before I went to the military, like I had the judge who I've been seeing like for 5 years. I'm 18 years old, and he's like, you know, it's sad that you keep coming here. You know what I mean? And I remember it was in New Brunswick, you know, the Central Courthouse in Middlesex County. He said to me, across the street, there's people that go to meetings like you. And I remember leaving the courthouse. It looked like a bunch of homeless people sitting on like a brick thing. And I'm like, yo, I'm not like those people. But really I was. I just didn't go down that level yet where I was homeless. You know what I mean? Or in the destitute of like addiction, you know. But every time I drank, I got angry, and that anger came out. You know what I mean? Every time I got arrested, I was on drugs or alcohol, you know. And you know, so I went to the military. Originally, I wanted to go to the Marine Corps because, you know, it was after 2011. It was like 2007. So, you know, I just remember my mom and my dad and my grandma just like pleading with me. And they were like, can you do the Air Force or the Navy? So I ended up going to the Navy. And I remember I took my ASVAB, and I had two jobs. It was a CB, which is like a builder in the construction field. And then the other one was military police. And I was like, I don't want to be a cop. But I was like, I don't want to be a CB. And then I ended up becoming an MP. And that was where like I started having a really critical identity issue, because like I'm learning this street game, and I'm, you know, involved in alcohol, drugs, you know, women, fast money, cars, you know, cocaine, pills, you know, and going down Jersey Shore and going to the city and really like living fast, you know. And when I went to the military, it was a wake up call. I went to Great Lakes. Great Lakes. I don't even know, Chicago area, one of those cities. And I'm out there from New Jersey. And when you're from New Jersey, like you're a different breed. And people, you open your mouth and they're like, you're not from around here. And I'm in basic training. And I have a woman petty officer, and she was pretty, you know what I mean? And she's like, "You eyeballing me?" All of a sudden, it got real, you know what I mean? She's like, "Get on the deck," and I'm doing push-ups. I'm like, "What the hell did I sign up for? I should have went to prison." And no, but it was a blessing because that's kind of where I started really, figuring things out and really seeing like I don't want to waste my life, you know what I mean? And in the military, you see people from like Indiana, Missouri, like all central United States, and that's like a career for them. Like their dads did it, their parents. It's like a pride thing. For me, it was like a way out of prison. You know what I mean? And come to find out, that was like my dad's story. And I didn't really know that until I was 18. And I remember telling him, I was like, "Yo, I'm strung out on coke, Dad. I don't know what's gonna happen. Every time I drink or do drugs, I end up getting arrested or getting in a fight or thinking about killing myself, doing destructive things that I would never do in the right state of mind, And as I'm in the military, I got to deal with, they have this thing called the moment of truth. It's like this one get free out of jail card. Or like, if you did something before you enlisted, let us know. And like the day I'm in boot camp, I'm sitting down with somebody and I'm like, yeah, I beat up like 2 guys last night, like the day before I came to basic training. So I had to go through that. I couldn't shoot during the training because I was on a legal hold. And I had to stay like in Great Lakes for like an extra 4 months in the winter. And it was literally like a holding for like kids that were getting discharged or people that were like got arrested, So it was kind of like prison actually.
Did your recovery send you to the military? Like how did that
The
all?
state of New Jersey sent me there.
Oh, they did.
Yeah.
Did they give you an option?
They gave me an option.
Okay.
Thank God. But like I said, it was just like all at once. You're 18 years old. Like I'm leaving my friends, leaving my girlfriend, and I'm getting ready. I'm in the military. And after that, after legal hold, like basic training is supposed to be 2 months or 3 months. It was like 7 months for me because of this legal hold. So I'm already like ranking.
You just do
up.
everything big.
Yeah, moving and. So I have to go to like a school and I get certified as a military police officer working with Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force. And as soon as I start getting liberty again, I start going back to drinking and drugs in uniform. You know what I mean? And like the whole time they're trying to help me, they're trying to like guide me to not do that. I remember I had this old petty officer. He's like, "Listen, Ray, I got a DUI once and the military sent me to a program and I stopped drinking." You know what I mean? And I was like, good for you. That didn't happen to me because I just couldn't see it, from the time I'm 12, 13 to like now I'm in the uniform and I'm still doing the same thing. I couldn't see it. So I did.
How old are you at this point?
I'm 18, 19
You're
years
18.
old. Yeah.
Still
and
young.
I'm still going just as hard. And, I remember after 2 years, I did my training. I was stationed in Virginia, Texas, and I come home on a reserve duty. And now I'm back home. I have a gun, a badge. Like I'm supposed to be, like a police officer. And I'm just like, I'm a disgrace. You know what I mean? Like to the badge, to the military. I just can't stop. You know what I mean? And then I ended up getting a DUI. Like that guy told me, you know what I mean, who tried to help me. And I remember my father telling me, he's like, I knew this was going to happen because you're partying all the time, And I remember splacking out, driving on the George Washington Bridge, a spark flying on a car, just like hitting cars in Jersey City, like just things I would never do ever, It's not who I am. And I finally go to like my first program. And when I was there, I realized I'm like, if I don't start opening up, if I don't start talking and letting people know what like about me, like this right now, when I was 20, I could have never imagined it, But when I got there, I started hearing my story. When I started hearing people in rehab talking about how they did drugs and they drank like me and they got arrested and they did the crazy things. I thought I was an alien. I thought there was something like wrong with me. I could never, be like everybody else in society. And I remember like being a kid before I really got into the substance abuse, just seeing like being a happy kid, like every day getting up, excited for life. And like the light got changed with darkness. You know what I mean? I started thinking negatively of myself. I started having bad stories in my head. And, thank God that's not my life today. But in the beginning, it was hard. I was like 20 years old, going through a court martial, losing my license, really feeling like at the bottom of the barrel, you know, and going to have to live into a sober living house. And I just couldn't imagine that's where my life would end up. But that was really like ground zero for me. And that's where I started to build. And
Ain't nothing further than rock bottom, right? You can only turn around and go the other way. When did you read Outwitting the Devil? How old were you?
probably starting my entrepreneur. I didn't start being an entrepreneur until I was 30, you know? So between 20 and 30, those 10 years, when I got out of the service, like I had no license. I was going to meetings. People were driving me. I had no money or buying me food at the diner after the meetings. And they said, listen, when you get money, you help other people. You know, it worked full circle. And I remember talking to my uncles because some of them are plumbers. And I remember working with them in high school when I was suspended. And they're like, why don't you just get back into the business? You know what I mean? Not with them, but like find your way, because they lived an hour north. I grew up in Spotswood, New Jersey. And I found a local plumber. He was in recovery at like 30 years. You know, he gave me a shot. I knew absolutely nothing. My first day, he's like, do you know how to use the saws? I was like, nope. He's like, do you know how to cut pipe? I was like, nope. But he gave me a shot, you know, and I worked with him for a year. We did work in the city, work in Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens. We did work in wood, and we did all high rise. He was a local one plumber, so he did like big work. And I didn't realize that I was stepping into shit. You know what I mean? Like learning the real, like, how to lay a job out, how to read the blueprints. And I fell in love with it. You know, it was like, it challenged me, finding a trade, you know, and after about a year, you know, I wasn't making that much money as like a green helper. It was like $10 an hour, but I would work at a restaurant at night. And the guy who taught me plumbing was actually a garbage man in the city. So he worked from like 6 to 2 on the job sites with us, and then go in from 4 to 12, throw garbage. And this guy was like a workhorse, you know, and he's like, bro, you're 20 years old, 21 years old. Like, get a second job. So I was working as a waiter at night, you know, and I had a work ethic. Like, I seen that from my dad and my grandfather. My first job was a paper route at like 10 years old, you know, and as soon as I got my working papers when I was 14, I was working, you know, working at Monroe Village's senior place in Monroe, and, you know, cutting lawns, just like trying to make it happen. And I really had that entrepreneur spirit. I just didn't unlock it until like I started becoming a plumber and HVAC guy. I got cross-trained.
Did you get your license?
Yeah, so I did, yeah.
Okay.
So I worked at Gold Medal Service in East Brunswick for maybe 7 years.
Big company, right?
Big company, yeah. They did plumbing, HVAC, electrical, sewer, underground, kitchens, bathrooms. So I was just like a sponge, working with everybody, learning all the trades. But you know what? I was like so humbled at that point where I went through addiction. So I was willing to ask for anything, like, hey, how do you do this? Or how do you do that? And, you know, some of the older guys would be like, hey, read the manuals. You know, so I would read the manuals and start getting technical on how to install a boiler or a furnace or HVAC or heat pump, you know, and then learn it. And they're like, go to school. So I went to school. I got my HVAC license, my plumbing license. And before I knew it, I was 24. I met my wife. You know, I thought I was rich. I had 80 grand in the bank. I moved back home. I was saving my money, and I met her. And before I know it, I'm like, we got to get an apartment. We got to furnish it. You know, we got to buy cars.
Spend all your money.
Before I know it, I'm like, I got 10 grand in the bank. And then we have this 1 bedroom in Fords, New Jersey, and I'm like working now, paycheck to paycheck, you know. And then before you know it, she's like, babe, we're pregnant. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm 20, 25, 26, and she ended up having a miscarriage, right? And I was like, oh, you know, it was tough, you know. And then about a year later, she's like, I'm pregnant. And I was like, okay. And we were engaged. We were getting ready to get married. We're living in this 1 bedroom. Before you know it, she's like, I'm working up in Short Hills, you know, on a heat call or something. And she has her first ultrasound in Old Bridge, New Jersey. So it's like an hour, no traffic. But in New Jersey, you know, the Parkway and everything, it could be like 2 hours. So I'm in the truck cutting people off, or, you know, just trying to get there. And that was a story of my life, like working for someone, you know, always late, always behind, just trying to make it happen. And I remember getting to the doctor's office. I walk right in. I'm like, yo, my wife's here. They're like, everybody's wife's here. I'm like, yeah, but you don't know. Like, my wife's going to kill me. And then I ended up seeing her, like, from the corner. I just walked in, and literally we're about to start the ultrasound. And she's looking at me like ready to bite my head off, you know? And they start the ultrasound, and the doctor's like, do twins run in your family? And I'm like, what? And you know, I swear, she said to me when we started dating, she's like, I want to have twin boys, and I want to have a daughter. And if you think like manifestation and seeing things before they happen, she saw that, you know, and I didn't. So I was like ready to throw up, you know what I mean? Because I'm like not ready to be a dad, let alone have two kids off the rip. And sure enough, like 6 months later, we had twin boys, and we lived in this little 1-bedroom apartment. And I was working like an animal just to pay the bills and get by. And you know, the journey is beautiful because, you know, like we were trying to buy our first house. It was like 2016, so 9 years ago, you know, and the market was a lot better than it is now. You know, we bought our first house. It was like a 3-bedroom, two bath for like 250. That same house is like 700 now. You know what I mean? I can't imagine being a first time home buyer right now, but we were fortunate enough to get in. Like I had an FHA loan. Like I barely had enough money to get that. And we get in there, we start getting settled in and get the boys in their room. I start painting their room, and we're like thinking about the other kid like down the road. And a year later, she's like, I'm pregnant again. And I remember she looked at me, she's like, this is going to be hard. I'm like, yo, we got twins. We got this. As soon as baby number 3 comes, it's my little girl. And she, like I said, she said that. Like, I want to have twin boys and a little girl. And sure enough, all that stuff happened. But then all of a sudden there's 3 kids and you're like, I don't have enough arms, you know? Yeah. And all 3 of them are in diapers. Yeah. And at this point it's 2020 and my daughter was born in 18. So she's about a year and a half. My twins are almost 3. Like they're all in diapers. They're all babies running around, and COVID happens. And at this time, you know, I left Gold Medal after a few years. I went to a couple other companies, started building service departments, bonus plans, like really like getting into that upper management, seeing the whole company and understanding a lot, not enough to like really open a business. But 2020 happens and COVID happens and they start shutting the schools down. So all of a sudden, like my boys are in kindergarten, my daughter's in pre-K, and they shut the schools down. All of a sudden they're on tablets and my wife's losing her mind. She can't go to work. And all of a sudden I have to I can't go to work. It's like, just like, it was insane, you know? And then I talked to the GM. She's like, hey, listen, we have to lay off a couple people because we can't have this many people working because of COVID and going in houses. And she's like, we gotta lay you off. And I was like, I got 3 kids, a mortgage, $2,000 in the bank. Okay, we'll figure it out, you know? And I remember I went home. I talked to my wife. I was like, I don't know what we're gonna do. They just laid me off. She goes, maybe you should open your own business. You know, and I always did side work for friends and family and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And, you know, like in the journey, like of opening my business, I was like, I need to find a brand that nobody else has. So I started doing like market research in New Jersey. And all of a sudden this Pipe Doctor name came to me because when I would work for people, or I did commercial, residential, you know, I did the new construction, then I did the service. So all of a sudden, you know, people are like, Ray, you're like a doctor. You figure things out nobody else can. And I was like, so I thought about Pipe Doctor. So I started looking up Pipe Doctor. There was one like in somewhere in New York. There was one in like Texas, South Carolina, but there was none in New Jersey. So I was like, okay. So I opened it. And day one, you know, like you have no work. I had a pickup truck.
You had to get your first customer.
So I had to get my first customer. It ended up being a friend, longtime friend. He was like transitioning his jobs too, but he had like this house that he wanted to. First, he's like, I want to remodel 1 bathroom. So I was like, okay. So before you know it, we start ripping it apart. There's mold everywhere and everything's all cast iron. He's like, let's just do both bathrooms, the kitchen, and then he's like, let's add a basement bathroom too while we're at it. So I'm like, okay, 3 bathrooms and a kitchen. Like normally that would be like a $10,000-$15,000 rough. It's a friend. I'm doing it for like $2,000, you know, because you're just starting. You have no understanding of business or anything like that. And I get a phone call from this guy. My first day opening the company, he's like, hey, I just got out of prison. I'm looking for a job. And I'm like, dude, I don't really have a company. I just started my business. My friend has a job. He goes, I want to work. I said, okay. So my friend calls me. He's like, and I'm like literally petrified of like opening the business. And he's like, yo, I'm ready to do the 3 bathrooms, the kitchen, and then in the basement he had a slab, so we had to chop the floor up. So I go there, I spray out the lines for like where the plumbing is going to go for the laundry room and the basement bathroom. So the guy calls me back. He's like, hey, I want to work. I'm like, all right. So I call my friend John. I'm like, John, can you go pick this guy up? He's at Wawa. He has no license and he wants to work. So I go set him up, and all of a sudden I start getting some phone calls for some service jobs. So I go I drop him off with a jackhammer.
Were you advertising at this
No,
point, or
no.
like somebody, word of mouth?
There was
Facebook,
I always had like friends and family that gave me work. But yeah, I did start the Facebook like, hey, I'm opening my plumbing company, and so his name was Joe. He was my first employee. He goes to my friend John's house. He chops up the floor, and we picked him up at like 9 o'clock. By 12, everything's dug out. John goes, "You want to hire that guy? He's a hard worker." And me and Joey started Pipe Doctor that day, and Joey was my right hand man the whole time going through the
Still a
business.
Pipe Doctor?
So he was the general manager, operations manager. After we exited, he ended up starting his own company. But he just came home from prison. It was day one. Like, that was a God move in my life. Like,
Sure.
I couldn't have planned that, and when we started the company, I was petrified. I mean, I had worked for these big companies, so I understood what you needed and what you to attract talent and to attract customers. And I just remember, like, my wife, I would be like, babe, I don't have 401k. I don't have health insurance. Like, I have nothing. How are these people why would they come work for me? She goes, Ray, you have you. They're going to believe in you. And I was like, okay, you're right. In my first year with Joey, we did 1.6 million in revenue, first year. And it was insane. I was working like around the clock, coming home, invoicing until 2 a.m, and then getting up. And it was a wild ride because my wife, she was working at Robert Wood Johnson as a recovery coach, so she has to go to work. So I would take the kids, put all 3 of them in the back of my pickup truck, put my tools in the bed, go pick up Joe. He had no license. Then we'd go take the kids to school and then start working. Then around 4:30, I would pick up the kids, drop Joey off, and then keep working until like 6 or 7. Come home, eat dinner, help her with the kids, and then if there was emergency work, keep going. And it was insane. It was absolutely insane. But thank God I did it. And when you're running the company out of your house, all of a sudden you have water heaters and boilers and toilets everywhere.
Stacked everywhere.
And your neighbors hate you, and they're calling the cops and the township. And, you just find a way, And I remember, all of a sudden I'm like working like an animal and have $700K of AR on the street. Not because I couldn't collect, I just didn't have the time.
Right.
All of a sudden the brand took off, people started referring us on Facebook groups, and, I started doing marketing, and it just blew up, and, the company ended up doubling every year. And year 2, you go to 3.4, 3.5 million. I hired my first office girl. We start hiring an HVAC tech, plumbing tech, and then I'm out of my house, and, we're like, we had meetings every Thursday at my house, so like in my den was like all technicians in there, a couple office people.
You were at 3 million still working out of your house.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
and
definitely something.
and my neighbors hated me. Like, we would park 2 trucks in the driveway, 1 in the street, and then I was like, "Are you guys gotta start taking trucks home?" But I'm so grateful for the journey. It was,
Walk us through like that first year, double the second year, and then how long were you in business before you decided to sell the company, and what was the company doing at the time of sale, so people can understand? Because I think a lot of people don't understand. Like, you obviously don't come from entrepreneur background. You were heavy in addiction. You tried to go the military route, and you kind of hit concrete. And at the end of the day, like, it took you another 10 years to arrive. But what I've seen, and we've had a lot of people, and we know a lot of people who come out of any kind of addiction. But when you use that addiction mentality, now you start using it for success. It's like a different animal.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to Anthony before. Like, between year 1 and 2, the taxes were all messed up with the state, the IRS, whatever. Like, we cleaned it all up,
Don't come after me.
But no, we cleaned it up because I had to. Because you go through due diligence with an exit, all that stuff comes up, So year 1 to 2, we went to a CFO, so it was a fractional accountant, to actually be inside the business, work with our bookkeeper, and really start organizing it. And at that point, we ended up getting our first office. We had storage units like strategically in New Jersey. We would store water softeners and water heaters over here, boilers and furnaces. And then I started doing M&A, buying small companies. And, but while doing all that, I needed the legal team and the fiduciaries. And I remember feeling like, okay, I got to trust the professionals that have done this before, and they're going to cost money. So I got to put that into pricing. You know what I mean? And you can't be the cheapest when you're scaling. You have to be the best at customer service and the best at conflict resolution, because there's always going to be upset customers and things that happen with the schedule and things are out of your control. And I had a mentor who had a property management company, about 150 properties. And he said to me, it's not how you handle adversity, it's how you respond to when you make a mistake as a contractor. And the people that give the bad names as contractors are the ones that don't do the right thing. Even though they have a contract, they said they were going to do it, and they burn customers. So my thing was, if I have a contract and we did it, we said we're going to do this, we're going to do it. Even if it costs me money, I lose money. The reputation, the brand is more important than a couple dollars, because it's a longevity thing, you know. And you know, between year 2 and 3, we went to 7 million, you know, and all of a sudden, like, people are calling me, hey, we're interested in your company, we're interested in your company. And that's when I brought my shop in year 4. And I remember telling, you know, Joey and the team, I go, yo, when we get this shop, everybody's gonna want to come work here, because now we're legit, you know. And we got the shop, and sure enough, it blew up. And we, you know, you go from like 3 trucks to 7 trucks to 15 trucks to 30 trucks to 50 trucks, and then you're at 65 employees, 50 trucks. It's a lot of overhead, right? And it's a lot to manage. And you know, having the right people around you to support you with cash flow, with P&L meetings, with lines of credit, expanding your credit cards. So like for me, my business, I had no money, right? So everything was on credit. I was personal guaranteeing all those trucks, the real estate, you know, the rents. It was wild. It was a wild ride. But you know, when you're starting to profit 25, 30%, it's a sellable, marketable, profitable asset that people will pay millions of dollars for, multi-millions, you know. And especially home services, whether you're in roofing, windows, doors, HVAC, electrical, sewer lining, drain cleaning, like these are profitable assets that these major private equities will pay, because they're buying the data, they're buying market share, and they want to roll up. And you know, I didn't know any of this stuff when I really started. I didn't realize I stepped in shit, like going and becoming a plumber and HVAC guy, because the market for home services is, you know, multiples of, you know, 8, 10, 12, 15x if your things are in order. So those were the things that I was able to, you know, benefit from. And for me, it wasn't just about me. It was like the key people that started with me and the other people that put the time in. Like when I did go through the exit, I made sure that there was clauses for them with, you know, earnouts and payouts. So it was pretty amazing, you know, experience. And, you know, due diligence process, when we went to market, there was about 13 buyers. You know, we narrowed it down to 3. You know, having the right brokerage team and having that CFO in order, so your due diligence process and your quality of earnings will stand going through the exit, so you do, you know, capture the value that the company's worth. But PE's gotten really smart. You know, like PE's been in home services probably the past 15 years, but the past like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, they would just buy the asset. They would buy the chaos. Now they're smart. They really look at the systems. They look at the management team. Mm-hmm. They look at the leadership team. And for me, I always think about like when I was a plumber, HVAC guy, I took so much pride in the work, right? Never like failing inspections, everybody talking about my work. And then at some point I had to evolve to be an owner, right? And to be a visionary and a leader. And it was the greatest purpose for me inside the organization was building people, because you can't do it all yourself. Mm-hmm. But if you build people, they can build the entity, you know. And when I look at companies like a Waze, right? You know, Waze, the driving app. Mm-hmm. Somebody had this vision to drive around with a camera and do it all over Europe. It didn't start in America; it was in Europe, you know. And then actually, I think it was like the Middle East, and it kept expanding to where Google paid $1 billion for it, right? Or like these young guys from YouTube, right? They're making videos. All of a sudden, you know, one of those big tech companies pay $1 billion for it. So for me, I didn't have $1 billion exit, but I had a multi-million-dollar exit. And it was like, I remember thinking to myself, you know, through the military, through addiction. And when I looked at the trades, I said, this is going to be a come up for me. It's not going to be something I want to do forever, but it's definitely going to help me like get my life together. And as I built a company, I started buying real estate, setting myself up for the future, so that when I did exit, I wanted enough ROI to cover my life before I went to an exit. So for me, that was like foundationally really important for me and my family and my lineage. And like Ed Milet says, are you going to be the one in your lineage? And for me, I answered that I'm the one. Right. And with that, when I was a little boy, I didn't expect to go through addiction, go through the military, have consequences, and then, become an entrepreneur. Like none of that was really laid out in front of me from my parents. It was really that when I was 16, I read this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Same.
And it changed my life because how I was raised was get a job, go to college, get a pension, get in a union, and I did that. Like before I opened my business, I was working for some union shops. I even worked at PSE&G for 6 months. I had an interview with the longshoremen, and I just wasn't cut out to be an employee. It's just not me. I'm a visionary. I'm a leader. I love people, and I love to build. I'm a builder, and so now after I've exited, I ended up building Rise Recovery with my wife and a partner. So that's where, Alyssa mentioned it. We house clients coming right out of rehab into sober living communities, and they have communities where we help them with job placement, job training, recovery resources, like really integrating back into society. And I actually had a bunch of people that lived in houses work for me at Pipe Doctor, and they were some of the biggest assets for me because they've been through some struggle. And I don't know if you know Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She says, I'd rather invest in somebody who's not from a wealthy family because they're willing to grind.
Mm-hmm.
If a kid goes to like a Ivy League school,
Silver spoon.
yeah, silver
it,
spoon.
yeah.
He doesn't know what it's like to struggle.
Right.
So for me, like strategically, when I do partnerships, I don't want to work with like a big Wall Street guy or anything. I like working with underdogs like myself. And I can now coach and teach them and mentor them to get to that next level, and then to build something that's worth market value, legacy wealth, and I was fortunate enough to work with my partner, Joe Papa, at Choice One. So Choice One is now an AI organization that works with home service companies throughout the country. We do inbound agents, outbound agents, AI influencers, and we met through a mastermind group, and I said, dude, I need AI in my company. So we started doing ringless voicemail to our clients, and it was for clients that we couldn't close a deal. Whether, not everybody's in
voicemail, so it goes straight to voicemail.
Yeah, and what I found was when you text a client, if they don't know the number, they just kind of erase it. Mm-hmm. But if you leave a voicemail, it'll, like through Apple and Android, it'll start leaving like a note. So it, like in the mind, it activates something. So then they'll listen to it. And when we dropped it, we didn't have inbound agents. So I only had the ringless voicemail agent. But these people have to opt in, because there's like the FCC laws. So if you have the CRM, you can then put it in your contract when they sign off on an estimate that you're able to call them, and like, even when I speak today, I've advanced so much, thank God. But when I started as like 15, 16 years ago, not knowing how to cut that pipe, like a ground zero in the workforce, like wherever you're at in your journey, what I would challenge you to do is to be grateful and to look at God, how he's put you in the right position, and like by me scaling, I started going to personal development training, Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, like, high level people. And I remember how I got to really look at how everything in my life happened for a reason. And I started to shift my identity that life isn't happening to me, it's happening for me. And it's hard to see that when you're in a struggle, right? So what I challenge you is, if you're in a struggle right now, watch God. Watch what he's going to prepare you for. Because I didn't understand that. Like, even when I had the twins and we were living in that one bedroom, like the struggle was real. Like, I remember my wife being upset, like, how are we going to raise kids in a one bedroom apartment? And I said, babe, don't worry, it's going to get better. And it did, And I remember when I started the company and my wife would say, you're never around. And I said, babe, don't worry, it's going to get better. Right. And people get so focused on the now, where if you start to shifting, it gets greater later. Put the work in now so you can benefit later on. It starts to make sense. You know what I mean?
The how-to gets easy. So I think it's important to talk about this because a lot of people fight God and his power and the relationships and how he puts people in front of you. And, Anthony always be like, oh, we're talking about God again. But I think at the end of the day, many people don't realize that God is our biggest resource, number one. Number two, we look at the situations in our lives, the relationships in our lives, and these are not things that happen because of us. These are things that happen because of divine appointments,
Of course.
and things that happen based on just being at the right place at the right time. Number one. So when you look at your life back, where in your teenage years you were a fuck up,
Yeah.
and everyone looked at you and your dad wanted better for you, but you just couldn't see better for yourself. And then you had a 10-year transition, and then you had a guy who just came out of jail, became your first employee. You guys built a multi-billion-dollar company. And all of this stuff, people will look at it as like, man, you were lucky. But you could have done one of two things. You could have said, fuck this, and I'm just going to go be a drunk or an alcoholic again. And this guy just came out of jail. I'm not going to give him a chance. When you know that now you have a chance, so now it's your job to give somebody else a chance. And what I've seen over the years I've been an entrepreneur for 26 years, the most successful people I've ever met in my life came out of addiction, or came from the most struggling families in their life, where their families just couldn't get their shit together, and they decided that they were going to be the gatekeeper, the one who went out there and changed the trajectory for their entire family. So like, maybe you could just talk about that, because I think it's important to understand that, like, listen, you don't meet people on accident. You don't have opportunities on accident, but most people go through life without taking those opportunities by not seeing what a blessing it can be, because maybe that only looks like a penny right now, but then it turns into $1 million.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, there might have to be a part 2 to this question, but if I was to, there's two things, major things I think about. One was when I was 16, and I played football. I had a concussion at Perth Amboy High School. And back then, 20 years ago, like, they scraped you off the ground and they said, keep playing.
Yeah.
You know, so I ended up getting a level 3 concussion, and I went into a coma for 3 days. And the whole time I was like, my head hurts. Your coach will just put you back out there, you know? And, you know, when I went into the concussion, I just remember them pulling me out of the high school bus, like cutting my shoulder pads. And I'm going on the stretcher into the ambulance, and I just remember them trying to lift my arm up and it falling down. And before you know it, my brain is shutting off. I'm starting to flatline. So they have to go those pads with the electric to shock you. To keep,
yeah.
At 16.
Yeah, whatever it's called. But it's like, and all of a sudden, like, my electric's working again in your body, because your body's on electrical grid. And, you know, so I'm passing out. I'm going into the hospital. Robert Wood Johnson, they're rushing me there. And I end up, like, you know, seeing my body. I ended up having an out-of-body experience, because my spirit left my body. It went into the light, you know, and that light is really shining down on every single one of us. And the world and the enemy wants to darken it. And as I was going towards the light, when I looked down, when I got to the top, I saw my great-grandmother who passed away. I saw my cousin, Diana, who passed away. And they were, like, in a good place, you know, like, spiritually they were connected. And I'm looking down at the darkness below, and it's like alcohol, drugs, fast money, like destructive behaviors, right? And I'm getting closer to the end, and I'm like, yes, I'm ready to see God. Like, I'm ready to come home, you know? And all of a sudden, I get pushed back in my body, and it's like you're drowning. You're like, and you get the air back. And this is after 3 days, you know? And I have to learn how to talk, walk. And I start talking to my mom and my dad. I'm like, yo, I saw my cousin, my aunt. I saw you guys praying my last rites. Meanwhile, my eyes are closed. So you can't understand that until you have to go through that experience. For me, I was bitter and angry at God that I didn't go to heaven, but it wasn't my time. I didn't accept Jesus, you know? I didn't accept Jesus till I was like 20 something years old. And now, like, I have a connection to God and to Jesus where, like, it's all for him. It's the glory of the kingdom, you know? And, like, everything that's good in my life comes from the light, and that's God. And I couldn't understand that as a young boy when I was in the darkness, you know? When I was angry and bitter and life was really getting a hold of me. And I remember when I was 16, you know, I'm reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You know, the state of New Jersey's giving me, like, a Big Brother program where guys are trying to talk to me. And I'm just so angry, you know? And there was a girl who wanted to hang out. And I said, okay, let's hang out. Now, you know, like, in New Jersey, public school, like, it's like drug school, fight school, you know what I mean? And this girl was like, if you want to hang out with me, you have to go to church with me. And I remember I went to Calvary Chapel in Old Bridge. I went with her, and I heard the band worshiping, right? And all that energy and that goodness, and I didn't feel worthy of it, you know? And I grew up Catholic, and I remember feeling like a loser in the Catholic church. I'd go with my girlfriend, strung out on Sundays, and just in the back of the pew crying, like, I know I'm a sinner. I know I'm a failure. I know I'm not good enough. I'm going to hell. Like, that's always what would go to my head. You know, all of a sudden I go to this Christian church, and I start, my spirit is awakening, you know, and that light is getting brighter. and I did accept Christ at 16, but I wasn't fully committed until
ready yet.
I started having kids and really getting married and really finding purpose in life, you know. So being saved has changed my life, and all glories to the kingdom, you know. And like every single one of us have to meet God one day. And I remember when I was 14, I was strung out. I was working at Monroe Village, and I went to cop coke, and it was a bag of dish soap, you know. And I remember crying in the break room. And, you know, this black kid came up to me. He goes, "Ray, I see the devil's controlling you." He goes, "You don't have to do this to yourself." And at the time, I'm like, I want to be like, "Fuck you," you know what I mean? And he goes, "God loves you." And I'm like, my soul is broken because I want to get high because I can't handle the human experience, right? I want to numb myself. And he goes, his name is Joe Musa. He said to me, he said, "Ray, one day at the end of your life, you're going to be waiting in line to meet God, and you're going to have a wheelbarrow." And I thought about the Winnie the Pooh jars of good deeds in this little wheelbarrow. Then the guy behind you is going to come up with tractor trailers of all these good deeds he's done in your life. And God's going to say, "Why didn't you take the opportunity? Why didn't you try? Why did you give up?" And right then and there, it hit me. I just didn't know a way out. You know what I mean? Like my soul was struggling, right? And, you know, I could go on, man, with you guys.
You're a true testament, bro, from that Outwitting the Devil book, because, I mean, I read that book. That book's powerful, and, like, everything that you're talking about right now is literally, like, the script in the book, right? It's been your entire life. And, you know, Napoleon Hill wrote that book, and he wouldn't publish that book because he thought the devil would destroy him if he published that book, and that book wasn't published till way after he died.
Yeah.
And it's changed so many lives. I mean, it's probably one of my top 5 books that I recommend to people. So, and you're literally living that life, dude.
Yeah, no, it's living in the light, right? Where you're connected to God is the greatest source of power that you'll ever experience, because you know that everything is His will. And like, you know, the program, NAAA, CA, they all don't feed us back into a God of our understanding. And, you know, like I said, we all have to go meet God. And like finding Jesus was, you know, like growing up, I didn't have that, you know what I mean? So it was against everything I knew. And then all of a sudden I started getting connected to it. I started praying, and I started asking God for help on everything in my life, and everything He's opened it so that His Son could be glorified. Right. And now, like my children, right. Like my parents never prayed with me my whole life. I pray with my kids every night. They end up praying, and, you know, like my parents never read a book with me. My kids, we read every night, right? Like we have those fundamental life essential morals and values, right, that I always needed, just didn't get, you know. So now, like, being the one in my lineage, like what my kids get to go through in their life, it's not a silver spoon, because I do my best to teach accountability, teach respect, and like all the things I implemented in my business, like core values, you know, brand promise, like we have that in my family, in my home, you know. And that's one thing that the enemy tries to destroy while you're building your business is your family. Yep. That's why a lot of entrepreneurs go through depression, suicide, divorce, right? Or getting unhealthy. And I had that, me and my wife, we battled that, you know. And also my health, like I'm down 20 pounds. Like I was heavy because the business was consuming me. You know, and to be able to release that and let go of it is a blessing, you know. And, you know, when you're going through an exit, like I could have kept going. It would have probably cost me my marriage, you know. And those were the things that me and my wife talked about, because I had an opportunity to be a platform company. I had an opportunity to just partner with a monster PE that they would have just fired everybody inside the organization and built their own people. But I partnered with somebody in the middle who cares about the people, who cares about the growth, and has, you know, equity in for the customers. I mean, for the employees, you know. And I mean, it's a beautiful journey. My life is a testament to God and his infinite wisdom, and how He can turn negative into positive, you know. And, you know, today my passion really is, you know, helping people and serving them, because like the most selfish thing in life is to keep the blessing that's God's given you.
Yeah, many people try to go on with life and, you know, feel like, oh, the harder I work, the more I do. But if you have no purpose and no reason, I mean, at the end of the day, I make less money maybe today than I ever have, but I bless more people. and so many more opportunities coming into my life today.
Yeah.
But I think what you and your wife are doing is super special. Number one, with your houses. Number two, both of you are out of addiction. Number three, you're raising your kids the right way and you're putting the right things in front of them with the right principles. So I think, you've had your run with the bad, you've had your run with the good. Now you're finding yourself in the center balance of like what's really going to work out for you.
Yeah. When I look at this American flag, we live in the greatest country in the world. And, when I hear people disrespect the flag, I'm like, dude, like my family came from Cuba. They had nothing. Mm-hmm. They were robbed of everything. They couldn't even eat meat if they wanted to. If you talk bad about the government, you get locked up. Mm-hmm. Here, you have freedom of everything you want. Capitalist society, you can make as much money as you want. You can be an employee. You can be an investor. You can do anything you want here.
That's what I call it, American greed, right? The more you get, the more you want. Yep. The beast is never full.
Well, I like Craig Cashel is a pastor in Texas. He has 25 locations. Every single one of them have no debt, right? And they impact their communities, battered women, homeless women, families. But he started that with 4 rental properties in college, like single families. And year after year, he's accumulated more rental properties and put it all back into the church, right? And then put it into the nonprofit. So every time God gives me an opportunity for a GoFundMe or somebody needs a little bit of help, that's my opportunity to step up. And when you do that, you get abundantly blessed.
Oh, ridiculous.
And when you ignore it, hey, that was your opportunity to step up. So everybody here will have that opportunity, whether it's buy someone a meal, spend some time with them, talk to them, connect to them. It's your opportunity to step up. And yeah, like the entrepreneur spirit, once you get to that high level, it's not about money anymore. It's about impact. Money comes when you build impact.
Money's secondary.
Money's a byproduct of the work.
Exactly.
And the lazy people, the ones that make excuses, they're the ones that will badmouth people with money. And the rich, like the identity shift is so hard. There's 2 things actually that are activated right now. One was you said that something about like how hard the trauma you've been through will propel you. Every billionaire or really successful person has had to overcome extreme trauma. Extreme. And that's what, once they overcome it and they own it and they could speak about it, there's nothing they're not going to say no to because they can handle it. They have the evidence, the proof that if they put their mind to it and they put the work and the action plan to it, it happens. It's already written. You're just catching up to it. Yeah. If you're not willing to do the work, it ain't going to happen. But if you're willing to do the work, watch God move.
Yeah, I have very little to say when it comes to God, but I have a lot to say when it comes to
well, I'm telling
pastor
you,
having
God
25 locations. It seems like a business, not like
yeah. But I said all of it's
effort, right?
He's going to have a revelation one day with one of our guests, or something's going to happen in his life and he's just not ready yet. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, he's Italian. Italians like you are born Catholic. I was born Catholic. I tell people I'm a recovering Catholic because that's an organization. That's a crime organization, the Catholic Church. Yeah. But when you go see a pastor, I was just at Greg Laurie's church in Harvest in California.
Yeah.
Bro, unbelievable, bro. The people there, what the mission does, and what the entire community, how the community's felt, and they're doing Harvest right now, and it's totally different, you know. But every single person, until they're ready, always has so I always had a bitter taste. I went to Catholic school. All that. I always had a bitter taste against, religion. And I think once you realize and come to understand that there's God and there's religion, religion's man-made.
Yeah.
And we're taught in obedience to understand, follow, and do religion versus accept Jesus. Like, you don't have to go anywhere, but you have to realize that everything that happens in your life today isn't because of you. And I know, it's a sore subject for Anthony, but,
I just want to read this one thing. Corinthians 3, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters, right? This is a great one. Proverbs 10, lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. So in the Bible, it talks about money a lot, and it's about what it does for the kingdom. Because at the end of the day, you can't have a hearse with all your money and your real estate and your stuff. You can't take it with you. But while you're here, it's about impacting other people and saving souls. The greatest mission in life is to bring a light to someone else's life. Because for me, I was filled with darkness, anger, and hatred. Right now, I'm filled with the Holy Spirit. Right, where I can give away Christ inside of me so you can see it in him. When people are like, Ray, you do amazing things. I'm like, I don't do it. God gave it to me. Every vision, right? Choice one, pipe doctor, I prayed on it. God gave them to me. I couldn't do it. He legit divinely gave it to
100%.
me. Even my wife with the kids, with meeting her, I was at a coffee pot at a church, right? And if you're single and you're young, I challenge you, write a list of everything you want in your partner. I wrote this list. Somebody in church told me that. And God gave me all those things and 1,000 more that I didn't know. But when I met her, she didn't have those. It was my job as the man to bring them out of her. And it's her job as the woman to bring them out of me. So that's where like the foundation of God and your marriage and keeping that in the center is what will build your marriage. If there's no God in the middle of the marriage, it's no marriage. There's no healthiness in the kids. If that happens, before you know it, the pride flag comes in, homosexuality comes in. The world will dilute your children and cause demonic pain and trauma, and it just cycles. And that's where addiction
So how do you
comes in.
handle if one of your kids happens to be homosexual? What happens then?
We go to the word, and I've had to deal with this living in New Jersey. The most liberal, crazy heart of the beast is right here. New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia. This is where the devil really is really strong. And if you read Outwitting the Devil, it says 99% of people are consumed with the devil. So that 1% of people is where I'm looking to surround myself with healthy, loving, godly people, right? Because if not, the world will destroy you just like it did to me. I was strung out. My nose has been broken, my jaw's been broken, my head's been split open. I've gone through all that trials and tribulations. And I'm grateful for every single one of them. And I'm grateful for the struggle of owning a business and being an entrepreneur and becoming a Christian. I'm grateful for all of it because it made me who I am. And I have a testimony, right? God gives you everything you go through so you can get to the other side. It's hard to see it when you're surrounded by the darkness. The devil's so cunning. He's baffling, insidious. And it says that in Outwitting the Devil, and it says it in all the programs. And he talks in your own mind.
A lot of people are so steadfast in their lane or in their lane and they can't see what's going on. Like, I think a lot of people, if they actually, like, when you become a Christian and you understand Christianity and you go to the Bible and you actually read a scripture and you take that scripture and you translate it to life, bro, people, if they actually fucking just listened, would be blown away. But the problem is we live in such a closed-minded society that people aren't, because they listen to the noise. So, but that Bible tells you everything. And again, like, this is like a sore subject for Anthony, but at the end of the day, like, you know, it just happens to be on every freaking podcast, right? Like, we talk about it and there's something internal in him that bothers him that he maybe fights God for.
Yeah, of course.
But again, it's not until he accepts it, he releases it, right? And then I don't know what that is because we've never talked about it. But there's going to be something internal that has to change you. And some people don't change till they're 50, till they're 60, till minutes before they go to heaven.
Okay, so that's the most important thing. Most
change,
people, before they die,
I don't think so.
I can never get convinced that somebody else is
most
in
people,
charge
before
of
they
my
die,
life.
they have two regrets. One is that they didn't spend enough time with family.
It's always the number one regret.
They didn't travel enough. And then the last thing is that they didn't accept Jesus.
I've never heard that before. Actually, this is the first time
If you've ever been with somebody who's on their dying bed in hospice, I have.
There's a book that actually describes the top 5 things. That's actually not in the top 5 things. So I'm actually surprised.
Every single person I've been to in hospice or closing to death, they want to know about Jesus. They want to go to the light because they're so close to it. So while we're here, we have the opportunity.
See, I almost died, bro. I had a heart attack and I was in an ambulance. Life was over. Looking up, bro. Texting my kids, don't even know what's going on. Like, I think and I almost died when I was like 19 years old. I got into a bad motorcycle accident. I think when you're so close to death and you see death itself, something happens. My son fell out of a window 18 feet from me to my feet, turned white like that cup. Thought he was dead.
Ooh, which one?
Devin.
Devin?
Bro, he was 18 months old. White, didn't move, thought he was dead. These things happen in your life to bring you to Christ. Because, dude, he like literally fell so fast out the window. Last, I would say 6 inches. It was a soft drop and he was laid there. Right in front of me, dude. I can't even make this up. And who was there? These 2 guys that I knew for literally like a week. that were Christians. They stayed at the hospital for days, brought us food.
Wow.
While family didn't do none of that. Nobody did none of that. And all they cared about was, how's he doing? Prayed over him. And I'm like, what is going, this is so weird.
Yeah.
But this was 2007. And that was a changing, pivotal point in my life. And listen, I'm not a perfect Christian. Nobody is. And I mean, we have to understand that, because of his love, grace, and mercy, we are who we are. But again, it takes people their entire life to understand that.
2.5 years ago, growing the company, I was on the beach with one of my managers and Ricky. You guys just had Ricky on.
Yeah.
And I went to walk to my
Oh,
car.
he told us.
Right?
Remember?
And I
Ricky
walked.
told us he almost died.
I walked back to my car in the Ocean Grove. We were there, and in Neptune, it was like a mile walk, and it was so hot. I was drinking water on the way there. On the way back, I ran out of water. I walked on the beach. I sat down. I sat in my beach chair, and I was like, "Yo, babe, I need to go in the water." And that was the last thing I remember. And I passed out on the beach. I went into AFib.
Remember Ricky said he was pumping him?
that's
So
right,
so
yeah.
so my heart was shutting down, and Ricky's a Marine Corps veteran, field guy. So he rips my shirt off, and he starts like rubbing my chest compressions. Now I know I'm dying, right? Dude, this lady came over. She started praying over me, right? And then a pastor came over. He started praying over me, and the whole time I'm just like, all right, Jesus, I don't want to die. Please, I don't want to die. My kids are on the beach. Dude, my kids are still traumatized from that 2.5 years ago. But guess what? I lived, and I went to the hospital. I couldn't walk. I couldn't talk. It's like the second time in my life.
Why did it actually happen to you?
I went
Just
into
out of shape?
AFib, my heart.
Oh, your heart just
Yeah.
went
AFib's out of rhythm.
And is that what made you start to get into shape?
Oh,
and lose
yeah.
20 pounds?
Get healthy. And then build a company to let go, because I was holding on to things. I had to start releasing things and developing people so they can scale the company.
One of the things I'm really curious about now that we're off of Jesus' path just for a little bit here is that, you scaled a company and then you exited. And a lot of people that come on this show, some of them have aspirations to just make as much money as humanly possible. Others want to leave a legacy. Some want to scale for an exit to maybe move on to something else and be a serial entrepreneur like you guys are, right? What bit of advice would you give somebody who maybe wants to take the same path as you or similar path, where they're looking for an exit and they just need the means to get there?
So I would write it down on a piece of paper, write down the vision, the goal, how many employees, what the exit looks like. I would ask God to come in and be the center of the business or the center of the trajectory that you want to build. And then if you don't ever want to exit, so here's a sad part. There's 3 ways to exit. It's inevitable. One is you go through on your terms. You exit for the money you want, which is the best one. I would agree, because it changes your life and it changes all the people that you want to change. The next one is you want to give it to your kids. They take over, they keep growing it, but that's not normally the case. What I've learned is a lot of the kids end up running it to the ground, right?
Or with nothing to do with it.
Or they want nothing to do with it. They haven't had the experience of life that the one has, right?
The struggle.
And then the last one is you die, and your company's not. It goes for peanuts, or it dissolves, or it goes bankrupt, right? So you have the opportunity to figure out what you want to do now while you're here. And my biggest advice was, because I meditated and I prayed every day on the business from the beginning to the end, get clarity on what your vision is and what you want, right? And then get connected to God, and he'll bless it for you. And then once you do earn it, now it's your time to share it. The ones that hold it, I feel sorry for them.
They fall apart.
Yeah, it's you implode.
What steps is probably a better question. What steps did you take in order to ensure that you were going to be able to exit on your terms?
You have to reverse engineer it. So what that looks like EBITDA wise, so understanding EBITDA, what the market value is of your company, and understand multiples. So you have to work with the people that will help you build it, right? You can't do it by yourself. But if you work with people that have already done it, like Tony Robbins says, there's a wheel. It's called mastery. You have to master it and then teach other people. So as you're scaling your organization, who's next in the next role? You have to continue to grow people. If your organization is a place of stagnant, it's actually dying, because your business is a reflection of you as the visionary owner. It's either growing or dying. And the worst is if it's stuck. That means it's dead. It's just, it doesn't have that liveliness, and that's the same thing with your marriage. and as being a father or a friendship, you know?
Everything.
Yeah.
You got to pour into everything to make sure that it's right. So I always say, like, anything in your life is either ripening or rottening. And people go, rottening is not a word. I go, but rottening is a way. And it's either going down or it's coming up. So we have to look at the perspective of that. So everything that we do, whether it's working out, whether it's business, whether it's relationships, whether it's friendships, Anthony and I have a good friendship, you know what I mean? And we help each other in a certain way. So we make sure that we grow. Like, he's a good cop here, a bad cop there. I'm a good cop here, he's a bad cop there. But we also like try to see how we can help each other. And we know where our lanes are. Like, I won't try to overstep him. We just put out an episode. He's like, hey, I think we should do this. Like, bro, all good. Like, whatever you want, bro. You know what I mean? Like, I was going to fight it. I said, let's look into it. See, then I let him and the other guy figure out that you guys do it.
Yeah.
For me, like, I'm not going to fight with him. He's my partner.
Of course.
And at the same time, like, he's given me the free hand to do everything I've done up until this point, and he had a suggestion. So I wasn't going to shut him down. What happens is, like, people shut each other down, and that could have been a test to be like, yo, is Dan good for me? Like, I just said, yo, he said it early. I said, let's see what it comes out with. I sent it to him. Hey, bro, it's up to you. You guys figure it out. Because at the end of the day, bro, we're in this together, right?
Yeah,
so,
course.
like, that's the same thing with business. Where I'm just looking to grow, he's looking to grow.
Yeah.
Relationships are the same way. Kids are the same way. Your body's the same way. Your health right now is the same way. You're either ripening or you're rottening.
Yeah.
And things in life, and this is the way you have to look at it.
I think you hit on something that's really important to the question that I asked you. Actually, one of the I would say cornerstones to success in general, and correct me if I'm wrong, is honesty, right?
Yeah.
And that's being honest with yourself, being honest with your team, and honesty with yourself looks like, hey, I'm not really good at this piece, this financial piece. Like, maybe I should get somebody else to do it, and admitting that that is not your strong suit, and bringing the right people in order to excel in these areas that you're not so good in.
Yeah. So, like, having a marketing organization, having a financial organization, having a mentor, having, there's different lanes for all these vehicles of success. And I think the last year before I exited, I was paying about $250,000 in fiduciaries and consultants for my team and for myself to scale. So it wasn't like all me. It was accumulation of all these successful people and then putting it together to build something that's really special.
Correct. Great. Well, Ray, it's been an absolute honor. We could probably talk for another 2.5 hours because we still didn't really cover Choice One too much, and we could have went into depth on Pipe Doctor. But it was really great having you on the show. You and your wife, you guys are fantastic, and we wish you the best on your move to Florida.
Yeah, congrats on that.
How could people find you if they're interested in Choice One, which is a business-to-business, right?
Yeah.
B2B,
Yep, B2B.
organization? How could they find you?
Yeah, right on Instagram, Facebook, Choice One. It's CHOICE 1, right? You can see us on Instagram and Facebook. We put a lot of free information out. You guys can watch stuff. There's a lot of reels, videos. If you're interested, we can set up a free demo. I'll jump on with you guys. I have a passion to serve, give, and help and transform lives, from, average to amazing.
Awesome, man. It was a pleasure having you out here, and glad you were super persistent on getting on the show. And we actually pushed you up a little bit, so we're glad to have you. Hey, guys, listen, stay tuned for this episode. And if you're not following us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, go ahead and do so. We really appreciate it.